and is easy to use. I commend the bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Speaker.
I call the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I begin my contribution to the Electronic Identity Verification Bill by congratulating you on your re-election to the esteemed position as an officer in this House, and say I look forward to your reminder and support of us adhering to standing orders, which you know more diligently, I believe, than any other officer of the House that I have known about, but also the engaging way that you respond to members during often quite difficult times. That your persona is appreciated, I think, by all members in the House. I also want to commend the Honourable Amy Adams on what I would imagine is her first piece of legislation, even though I also want to acknowledge her predecessor Nathan Guy, because he actually did a lot of the work, not all of it. But I think it's an important occasion when a minister has her first bill introduced to the House, and I can assure you that the Select Committee, to which you alluded to, you want to refer it to, the Government Administration Committee, will give it a rigorous attention and will ensure that it comes back to the House with every single detail considered, every concern not only looked at but addressed, and that the entire House will have confidence in the robustness of the legislation. Labor certainly agrees with the point of this legislation and supports its progress. There no doubt will be some issues that arise in Select Committee. I don't recall any legislation that hasn't had. But in terms of the principle, I think it's a really good bill. But basically, as the Minister outlines, it stops people needing to provide often quite frustrating amounts of identification with a variety of different agencies. We all know that to carry numerous amounts of paperwork around with you is a pain in the neck. Actually, it's quite dangerous as well. I don't think people should be encouraged to carry their passport with them all the time, certainly overseas. It's a habit that people are strongly advised against doing. You don't walk around the streets of some city with your passport in your pocket. But in New Zealand, that's what we require of many people. Bring in your passport or get it photocopied, and then you have to go through the added tasks of getting a Justice of the Peace or a lawyer or a Member of Parliament to witness that that document is a genuine copy of the original. So you have another round of paper filling to do. So this bill seeks to get rid of that requirement by having a little box that's controlled by DIA under the management of New Zealand Post, which I'm very pleased to hear about. And if an individual puts information on that, in that little box, their choice to do it, they can then, again, their choice, have that information shared to the agencies that they have authorised to provide the level of identification that is needed. I think it's a great idea. I do hope that it leads us on to further thinking and courage about how better the internet can be used to provide access to information, access to services, access to voting, whatever. Because so often that robust verification of identification has been the barrier. I also think that, I don't know if it's common in other countries, but I think in New Zealand we still have a lot of anxiety about where things go when you put information on the internet. I know a large number of people who still won't buy things online because they're so nervous about putting their credit card numbers into a computer, because then they vanish off the screen and they don't know where they go. Someone else might get them, and the next minute they'll get a huge credit card bill. Actually, it happens when you just leave your credit card on the counter by mistake as well. But oh, that's right, or you leave your wallet somewhere where your children might get access to them. But I do think there's an anxiety about where information can go. I particularly noted the point that Minister Adams made during her introductory speech, which was that if the public loses faith in this process, then the whole service will fail, and I do think that's a very important point. We have to be very careful if this bill is referred to our Select Committee that we listen to the concerns the public have and make sure that we can provide them with the level of confidence they require, because this is not a service that should fail. But we need the confidence of the public, and therefore we need the robustness of the service. We do have the absolute clarity within the legislation. I actually think it's a very well drafted bill, that consistently throughout the process it is the individual's choice about what information is stored and which agencies that information can then be shared with. So that's, for me, a primary point to make known to the public. This is not information that can be gleaned from other documents or other sources and compiled on your behalf. It's only when you have authorised it yourself that you'll be able to, have that then shared with agencies, and then it's only agencies that you have authorised again. You can't have any unauthorised exchange of information. I heard some debate over the dinner hour about this legislation where people thought that it actually allowed for data sharing between agencies, which would be of benefit, to the particular agencies. For example, some work and income information may be of use to Housing New Zealand, or maybe of use to IRD, or maybe of use to some debt collecting agencies. There's information that if it was shared could be of use. And I know that some people thought from the discussion we had over the dinner hour that this would allow that, and that's something that I'll be seeking absolute clarification of during the Select Committee process. My reading of the bill says that is not possible. If that was a sort of side advantage, then I think we'd have to be very upfront with the public. But the Minister's agreeing with my point. It's not enabled by this legislation, and I'm very pleased to see her nodding about that point. The other advantage in this legislation, and again it might be just part of the progress of the way we do things in New Zealand, but the advantage to me currently is that this doesn't replace other ways of providing identification. So if you just don't trust the internet, or if you don't want to do it for whatever reason, you can still get your passport photocopied and validated and send the photocopy with your, the signature saying it's a correct copy off to whichever agency you have to provide that verification of identification to. So this is a progressive choice. It's not eliminating the sort of, the current ways that we do things. So I think that's a very good point as well. I was delighted to hear the Minister's enthusiasm for the involvement of the Privacy Commissioner in this work. I do think it's very important that the Privacy Commissioner keeps on top of these issues. The ability to require the Chief Executive of the Department of Internal Affairs to report on any aspect of the service to the Privacy Commissioner should give New Zealanders, again, confidence that the information won't be misused. Mr Speaker, I also noted that New Zealand Post was an exclusive agency for the operation of this service, which is, well, I think it's fine, actually, but it does seem to go against the grain somewhat. And I wondered if the Minister had any particular reason, and perhaps the Deputy Chair of the Select Committee to which this bill is referring might be able to glean some words from her about whether having New Zealand Post in that position as the exclusive agency was a considered decision, or whether it just happened to be that they were the most appropriate or up and able to do it, or whether it was because they've been working this system, this service, since the operational trial began in December 2009. So, Mr Speaker, I certainly hope that we'll be able to get some assurance that New Zealand Post won't be next on the block to be sold off as well, because if it was, that would cause the public huge concern and would, I know, be of worry to the Minister, because then the public would lose face if a private agency had all this information stored and perhaps was able to potentially make money out of it. So we want to avoid those sorts of things, and the best way to do that, of course, is for the government to not sell state assets. Mr Speaker, the final point I want to make is that this has been operating since the end of 2009. I agree with the bill and with the comments in the explanatory note, and also in the regulatory impact statement, which looked at the alternatives. Do we need to have a legislative framework? Are there alternative regulatory processes, or could we just have it operating as it has been under trial with a non-regulatory option? I want to commend the regulatory impact statement. I think it's very considered and robust, and it's the sort of quality this House needs. I agree with the verdict of the RIS that we do need a robust regulatory framework, and I look forward to the debate in the Select Committee and certainly offer Labour's support for this bill to the next stage.
I call the honourable member